Number 4 is a cone that's just tipped over. The height is still this measurement right here. This 13.1 is still the height, because if it were tipped upright like number 1, it would be the up and down measurement. So even though it's tipped over, again, that's still the height. So our volume of a cone is right here. We're going to use this formula for number 4. So V equals 1/3 pi r squared h. When you're showing your work, you don't have to copy down the original formula necessarily. It might not be a bad idea to put it first, but that part's not necessarily required. What you do have to show is what we call the plug-in step. So I want you to show where you take out the variables and plug in the numbers. So what we need is the radius and the height. So we don't have the radius yet because we're given the diameter. The 14.4, as you should know from circles, is actually the diameter. That's the whole distance across. That's not the radius. So if our diameter is 14.4, the radius would be that divided by 2, which will give us our radius of 7.2 feet in this case. So now we have all the units that we need to put in, or all the measurements we need to put into our formula. So it's going to be 1/3 pi times our radius, 7.2, squared times our height. Please always show this step. This is called like showing your work. When we do in terms of pi, like the question or our directions tell us to, we have to type everything into the calculator except for the pi. So we're going to type in basically just everything else. I'm going to type in the 1/3, I'm going to type in this part, and the 13.1, just the way you see it, without the pi in initially. So for 1/3, I usually just do 1 divided by 3. That makes a 1/3. And you'll notice here my cursor needs to be kind of arrowed over because I'm underneath the fraction right now. I got to go to the right. So it's 1/3, and we can put a time sign if we'd like, or just put parentheses. 7.2, close the parentheses. Then we need to square this, so the little a squared will do that. And then times the 13.1. Again, parentheses is fine, or to use the times symbol. So we're going to write this whole number down. Don't round anything until the very end. So this will be our in terms of pi answer, 226.368. That's all the numbers that are in yellow. And the pi we didn't use yet, so put it next to it. This is called in terms of pi because pi is in the answer. There it is. So for our rounded answer, we go back to our calculator and then just do times pi. You can put the pi right next to it, actually, will be just fine. So that'll be our rounded answer because pi is an irrational number, so it makes our decimal not repeat or terminate, so we have to round it at some point. And our directions say to the nearest tenth. So as you can see here, it's 711.15. So for the nearest tenth here, that 5 is 5 or above, is going to bump the 1 to a 2. So it's going to be 711.2. Our unit was feet, and volume is cubed. So that would be our answer rounded to the nearest tenth. And again, that's from a cone with a given diameter. Let's look at least one more example. Look at number 5. 5 is kind of a weird looking one because it's not a full sphere, it's what we call a hemisphere or half a sphere. So our sphere formula, as you can see on the bottom here, is 4/3 pi r cubed. So what we could do is find what it would be for a full sphere and then divide it by 2 at the end. Or if you're just kind of a little bit more creative here, what's half of 4/3 pi r cubed? Well, half of 4 would be 2, so half of 4/3 would be 2/3 pi r cubed. That would be for a hemisphere, because you're basically just doing 1/2 times 4/3 pi r cubed, and 1/2 times 4/3 would be 4/6, which is equal to 2/3. If you just simplify or reduce the fraction down to its simplest form. So I'm just going to use that formula because why make it more complicated than it already is? So 2/3 pi r cubed I'm going to use for number 5. So 2/3 pi times the radius cubed would be our volume. Now, again, we don't have the radius in this example because the 24 is showing us the whole diameter. In order to get the radius, we just take the diameter and divide by 2. So our radius is going to be 12 for this example. Now we take that 12, plug it in for r. So 2/3 pi times the radius, 12, cubed. Again, we're going to do in terms of pi first. We're going to type everything in except for the pi. So everything else, basically, the 2/3 and the 12 cubed, all being multiplied. So we're going to just put them side by side in parentheses. I'm going to clear off my calculator and just start fresh. 2 divided by 3. I'm going to move the cursor over here. I'm going to skip the pi, put the parenthesis 12, close the parenthesis, and then to get the cubed here, we're going to use the a to the b. That puts us in the little exponent space, and now we can type any exponent you'd like. We're going to use a 3 here, so it's 1,152. But again, we didn't use the pi yet, so we're going to put the pi next to it. That's our in terms of pi answer, because pi, again, is in our answer. To get our rounded answer, we're going to take our current one and then just multiply it by pi. You'll notice here my cursor is still up at that exponent, so I got to be careful. I can't put a pi up there because that'll put it in the exponent, and that's a problem, as you can see. Very, very big number there. So what I need to do is either arrow over next to it and then put the pi, or I could just say, well, that was 1,152. I could just type that in. 1,152 times pi, or just pi next to it. It's the same answer either way. So this would be our rounded answer, 3,619. If we're doing to the nearest tenth, that would just be 0.1, because the 1 after it would say keep the first one the same. Bring our unit down, feet, and volume is 3-dimensional, so it's cubed. That's how we can find volume of a hemisphere.